We are simply not looking for strengths. Solution focused is what's called an efficacy based. We're looking for what works. And when people are thinking about strengths, it gets people confused with problem solving. Now, from a hands-on perspective, these are the things that I always say is that if we're looking for strengths, it leads to what I call cheerleading. Now, I use a lot of physics when I teach solution focused. Remember that physics principle that says for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, right? So if a client is struggling, if a client is negative in their self-talk, do you see how that's going to trigger, according to physics, the opposite and equal reaction of becoming positive, of cheerleading, of saying, oh, come on, you can do it, right? And on the surface, that doesn't look like a big deal. However, if if I become positive and cheerleading, what does physics say is going to get triggered in my client? It's actually going to entrench their negativity. So it's going to sound something like this. I'll never be able to do it. Meth is so hard to give up. Oh, you can do it. I've seen clients do it. I know it's hard. Yeah, but I've tried. You just don't understand me. And it's going to result in that distancing. It's going to result in that entrenching, right? It's also going to result in convincing. This is something that I see all the time in the classes that I teach, that people say, how do I get my client to see their strength? You see how it's a high power differential? The professional has already labeled something as a strength, and therefore the professional's natural inclination is to try to convince the client that they see something that the client doesn't see. We're no longer in a curious stance, right? You see this a lot when it comes to exceptions, this belief that just because something worked in the past, that then they need to bring it forward. And if I can just convince my client to do that in the future, we've lost our curious stance. And all of this puts us in that expert-based agenda. One of the biggest things that I really valued from my time with Insu and Steve was this belief you cannot be curious and think you know at the same time. We can't, right? And that includes if I think you're good at something, or if I think in this future place, you would be pulling this exception forward. So I want to know, what if this makes sense?
Yeah, I guess what's really struck me tonight, coming from, I guess, the strength-based sort of background before I got into solution focus, is I guess how wasteful it can be looking for strengths because I think you might think it's a good thing rather than that very clear focus on what works.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly one of the things that's come over to me very strongly tonight. It's not
Yeah.
efficient. It's not an efficient way of working.
Hmm.
It's nice and it's lovely to be able to ask questions that make people kind of think about their strengths. But actually, that's
Hmm.
not what we're there to do, is it?
It's not what we're looking for, right? And I'm a
Hmm.
firm believer people are people. So I use myself as an example all the time. I think about like, what are my strengths in my relationship with my husband, right? I mean, I'll be honest with you with my strengths. I'm very good at getting him to do things I don't want to do. I am very good at justifying why he should take out the smelly trash, especially when it's cold and late at night, right? I'm very good at justifying why he should shovel the 6 feet of snow because he's stronger than me, right? I am very good at justifying that. Those are my strengths. But I'm here to tell you when my relationship is going well, I'm doing very different things. I am taking out the trash when I notice it first. And you know what? I'm not making a sound about it. I just notice it, I pick it up, and I take it out, right? If I'm the one who leaves the house first. I get out the snow shovel and I start in, right? That's what I do when it works. It's a different way of thinking. We can sort in many different ways. I'm going to take us back like to gravity. I think we all agree once gravity was discovered, it's worked pretty much as it was discovered. But we can teach it differently. We can do different things with gravity. But gravity really hasn't changed. And that's really how I look at what I learned from Insu and Steve. I don't believe in the concept there's a 2.0. I haven't seen anything in a 2.0 that I didn't learn directly from Insu and Steve. And so everything that's at the heart of solution focused, what I see as different is in the teaching of it, in the application. There are so many more, better ways to teach it than I have discovered, I'm sure, different applications. But at the heart, this concept, if it works, do more of it. This idea of working towards a preferred future rather than trying to get rid of problems. This idea that there's always things, exceptions happening. I can tell you where all those are in physics, right? This idea, whatever you focus on gets bigger, is in physics. If I hold up this pin and I stare at this pin, now the pin is larger than my computer screen. I couldn't finish this workshop staring at this pin. But if I shift my focus back to the screen, I see you all clearly. I could talk all day long, just like this. Now, what I've just shown you is what solution-focused practice is by showing you a physics principle. Our clients come to us all the time holding their problems. They're all encompassing. It's all they can see. And unfortunately, oftentimes we join them and we start staring at the pin, and now everything is blurry to the professional as well. Solution-focused, all we're doing is shifting to the preferred future, shifting to what the person wants. We still see their problems, okay? We still see them, but now I can have a conversation with people, right? The client can move forward. Now, we all will work with some clients that are incapable of setting this pin down because with our clients, even like with this talk, if I was holding up this pin, eventually I would just spontaneously set it down because the pin holds no function. The clients do the same thing. If if I, through solution focused questions, get them to focus on how they want their life to be, what I find is clients just spontaneously set down their problems.
Terry, I'd just be interested to know about your thoughts about, when you're establishing that, that something's working and the question of how do they do that? And I suppose it's the motivation behind asking that question. And when there is a I don't know,
Yeah.
how do you remain curious rather than feeling that you're the expert, thinking that if they don't know why it's worked, and as a therapist thinking, well, it would be really helpful for them to know how they did it, to be able to let go of the fact that they didn't know, but it did work.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are accidental exceptions and intentional exceptions. Okay. Things that work and we can easily explain how I came up with it and what I did, and things that were just sort of happy accidents. That's just sort of how life goes, right? So if I ask somebody, how'd you come up with that? They're like, I don't know. Then I'm going to say, all right. So did it work? Well, yeah. Okay. So would it be helpful to know in the future how you did it? Oh, yeah, because if I knew, then maybe I could do it on purpose. I'm like, all right, so that's something we still have to figure out. That is one of my absolute favorite responses, Susanna, when somebody has a genuine, I don't know. Because it's not like, well, good luck. It's like, all right, so that's still something that in this future place we have to discover. And that was something that Steve DeShazer used to turn into the end of session message, right? Now, so we'll turn those into what we call noticing assignments. So then I might say to the client, I want you to just notice when this comes up again. And start to notice, how did you come up with it this time? See, it's true they don't know how they came up with it in the past, and we don't have a time machine. We can't go back. We may never know how they came up with it in the past. But again, if they say it's something that would be helpful for them to figure out, then they can become more mindful, more purposeful in noticing future exceptions. And if it's a purposeful looking for a future exception, then they now have a choice over how fast it comes and goes. See, in the past, it was just a blip, right? But in the future, if I know I'm looking for that, I can say, oh, there it is. Now, what's happening? How did I do that? And it's more real time. And that's the beauty about taking those random exceptions and turning those into noticing homework to get them to start to discover what they don't know right now. Daniel?
Yeah, we are running out of time, but just wanted to mention briefly, when you were talking about resources and strengths and the OG of solution-focused therapy,
Mhm.
isn't it that every time that we do invoke exception or question what has worked before, are we asking about resources? Isn't every other experience from before a sort of resource and strength that we can dive into with the person across the room?
I'm going to challenge us a little bit. Maybe, maybe not. Resources is a label, it's jargon. And not to throw out a teaser, but like another back to basics is all about exceptions. I'm going to say something that might really make you scratch your head. All past exceptions have failed. So I definitely don't want to pull past exceptions into the future. So what I mean by that, again, I keep going back to addiction because addiction provides us with a wonderful obviousness in how that works. So let's say I'm working with a client who's struggling with alcohol misuse. And they say, but I was sober for 2 years. What I don't want to do is say, well, let's take what you did there and bring it into the future. Because if I just bring it into the future, at best they can be sober for 2 years and then they will relapse because that's what happened. So instead, I want us to think about exceptions as wonderful learning opportunities. When they talk about, I was sober for 2 years, then I might say, so what worked? How did you do that? And then once they say that, I can get curious and I can then say, so in this future, what would you do the same or different when it's working as long as you want it to work? So these past times of exceptions become opportunities to discover what they know works for them.
To learn something that can be built upon that from before.
They might, or they might scrap it. They might say, yeah, what I learned is that doesn't work,
Yeah,
right?
of
Or I'm
course.
a different person.